Maqasidic Tafsir.
Where should I begin when I'm starting at the end? Pursuing the higher aim, learning the meaning of every page. Where should I begin when I'm starting at the end?
Assalamu alaikum. Sunnahfollowers presents a new class, the Maqasidic Tafsir, being taught and brought to you by Ustada Layla Nashiba. Please stay tuned, streaming on all major platforms, right here on channel Sunnahfollowers.
Alhamdulillah, wa salat wa salam ala wa rasulullah. I'd like to welcome everybody to our series of the Maqasidic Tafsir. And before I begin the class, I want to remind everybody the commercial that you just saw, that's the new book of Dr. Kareem Abu Zaid that we're going to be teaching here at Sunnahfollowers for the Sunnahfollowers Kids program. So please go to Amazon.com and purchase that book. We're going to be teaching your kids how to pray. That book is written specifically for children ages kindergarten through 3rd grade, and the book is over 300 pages. It covers everything the kids need to know about the importance of prayer and how to perform the prayers correctly. It has puzzles in it, quick questions in it, and we'll do all that stuff live in the Sunnahfollowers Kids class on Sundays. So please, guys, get to Amazon.com and purchase that book. It's entitled My First Salat. My First Salat, and it's written by Sheikh Kareem Abu Zaid. The book is $24 and it's well worth it. And with that said, let's get started on this class. And this is our class on the Maqasidic Tafsir, Volume 1. This book, too, is written by Sheikh Kareem Abu Zaid. This book, too, can be purchased at Amazon. You might as well get them all. Get this book at Amazon. It's $19.99. Also get the children's book, My First Salat. It's $24. And also get the book entitled Know Your Lord, because the books written by Sheikh Kareem Abu Zaid have been incorporated as part of the curriculum here at Sunnahfollowers. We'll be teaching his books here for all of the classes that I teach. All the classes I teach will be based on his books. Okay. And we've been studying the science of the Quran, because that's what this is all about. The Maqasidic Tafsir. This is the class where, as you are learning the science of the Quran, you're learning how to understand the Quran the correct way. As Muslims, we're supposed to aim high for the greatest, most correct meaning of the words of Allah, and then in turn apply them to our lives. And let's put the PowerPoint up on the screen. I know I told you guys we would go over pages 133 through 137 tonight. That's what I posted up. However, after viewing those pages, I decided to just take you from 133 to 135 because it's a lot of information and I don't want you guys to get confused. So let me put the PowerPoint up. Wait a minute. Bam, there it is. Wait a minute, give it a second. Yeah, hold on here. Okay, Geechee, you're on good. You're on there. Good. Geechee's on Rumble. She's on Rumble. So for those of you who use Rumble, mashallah, Geechee's there. So if any problems, we got it together. I know we had a problem yesterday trying to work all the program. By the way, Twitch is up and running. I did not know, because you guys didn't tell me, that I was streaming to myself. I was streaming to Layla Nashiba on Twitch instead of Sunnahfollowers. So now, if for those of you who like to use Twitch, We're back live on Sunnahfollowers channel. Sunnahfollowers. Nobody told me until yesterday. I didn't know. So, mashallah, I spent the whole day fixing everything. So we're back streaming on Twitch, this channel, Sunnahfollowers. So for those of you who use Twitch, no problem. And I do have Twitch set up to ban automatically, but I got moderators too. So don't worry about it. If there's anybody that comes in with trouble, we got it covered, you know, inshallah. Okay. All right. So tonight, what I'm going to do, instead of covering pages 133 through 137 in the book, because that was a lot of information, instead we're going to do pages 133 through 135. And we're going to focus on the primary versus secondary details of the Quran. That's what we're going to focus on for tonight. The primary versus secondary details of the Quran. And what are we speaking about here? Well, first, before I get into the lecture, to serve as an introduction into what we're going to be speaking about, I have one question for you from the last class we had. And this will give you a clue as to what these pages are about. Who can tell me, and there's more than one answer, why is there a need for a higher aim-based interpretation of the Quran today, as opposed to during the time of the Prophet's companions, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Let me repeat the question. Why is there a need for higher meaning-based interpretations of the Quran today, as opposed to during the time of the companions? Remember, during the time of the companions, they didn't have Quran tafsirs. Okay, there was no need for a higher aimed explanation of the Quran. But today, there is a need for it. Why? Who can tell me why? There's a lot of common sense answers.
Number one, because the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah, is no longer here with us.
MashaAllah, that's the first answer you guys should have came up with. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not here. He was a teacher of the companions. They understood the Quran the correct way and how to implement its meaning, because they had the best of all teachers. So that's one reason why. What's another reason why there's no need for books of that there's a need for higher meaning understanding of the Quran today as opposed to back then? Give me some more answers.
Each generation just gets further and further from the true Islam and the true meaning.
Wow, that's deep. Would have been my answer. Exactly. Because our prophet said that as the mankind evolves, each generation of Muslims will become further and further and further away from understanding Islam and its truthfulness, and also further away from practicing it. Good job, Latifa. What are some other reasons as to why we have a great need for higher meaning interpretations of the Quran today as opposed to then?
To tag on what the last sister just said, also, I hear a lot of people, including myself when I first started coming to Islam, was that, people say that the Quran isn't, for the times today, when in reality it is. So having a deeper understanding will let you know that the Quran is for all times.
That is what today's topic is going to be about too. Exactly. Good job, Sister Nia. Exactly. Exactly, guys. Because we're so far away from true Islam, from practicing this religion correctly and understanding it correctly, you got a lot of earheads that walk around saying that the Quran is outdated, that there's no need for it, that we can tweak like the brothers down there in Texas who call themselves scholars are doing, claiming that they can tweak and change the laws of Sharia, Allah's laws, and put them in categories of essentials versus non-essentials, and make them conform to meet society standards. Good job, Nia. Proud of you. That's what today's lecture is going to be about. Also, as Sister Sakina said, we got so many different sects today. All these deviant Muslims whose understandings are nothing like what the original companions had, whose understandings contradict theirs. Good job, Sakina. Also, as Sister Annette said, we got so many sects that have distorted and made up their own views of the Quran. You know, their own views of what Allah was talking about. You see what's happening in the news here in America? Brothers being found guilty. It's been going on for a long time, molesting women and children and stuff, claiming and making up rules that don't exist in Islam to justify them doing what they do. Good job. Go ahead on YouTube. Zoom. Go ahead. Whoever was on Zoom, go ahead.
So they won't put their own opinions.
Whose deep voice was that?
That was my son. He said, so you won't follow their own opinion.
Girl, that ain't your little boy. How old is that's Tahira's brother. How old is he now? He ain't but 16, right? Oh my God. What happened? His voice changed overnight. MashaAllah, baby. I'm so proud of you. You done grew up with your little handsome self. Exactly. Repeat it again. I'm still shocked. Everybody's shocked here. Yeah, that was Amina's son. Yeah, that's Amina Fresno's grandbaby. Yeah, girl. He sound like a grown dude. Like her, he sound like her sons. Like his uncles. You know. The rapper. He got a voice like the rapper. Exactly. Go ahead, Geechee. Go ahead, Geechee. What you say, Geechee? Geechee? Who was that? I'm just shocked, guys. He was a little kid. He done grew up overnight. Okay. Also, good job, Sakina. The lure and temptation. The lure and the temptation of this dunya has always been there. But people are succumbing to it more today because they don't have that fear. Good job, Brother Edward. Because they don't have that fear. He said the fear of Allah is not prevalent today like it was back then because of the way the deen is distorted and the way it's been abused. Good job, Edward. So intellectual. Exactly. And also, Jamila said the need today being a convert. The need because there are lacking of understanding of the Quran. Exactly. We need to have the high, correct understanding of the Quran in order to survive today, like those original companions did. Those are there. And let me explain something to you guys. And I'm so glad that Sister Nia brought this up. She started this type of discussion off with her answer. MashaAllah, that's being Maqasidic. There is nothing happening in this world today. There is nothing that we are experiencing today, not the war in Gaza, not the earthquakes, not the tornadoes, not the famine, not the drought. There's nothing that is happening today that hasn't already repeated itself. They were genociding Muslims from the beginning of time. What did you guys learn yesterday in Mukhtar's class or the other day? When Heraclius, who was the emperor of Rome, when he heard of how the Muslims defeated the Persians in battle, He said, I'm sick of these Arabs from the desert. I'm sick of these vagabonds. He said, let's annihilate them. Let's wipe them all out. So the Romans set on a mission to genocide all the Muslims, all the Arabs, just like the Persians. The Persians thought that they were trailer trash people from out the desert. Oh, we're going to just annihilate them. We're going to just, rid the world of these Muslims once and for all. But they were defeated. Khalid bin Walid and his army defeated them. The same thing happened with the Romans, but the Romans were even more shocked because, as you learn from Jonah the Greek, a lot of the Roman men ended up converting to Islam. Instead of fighting against the Muslims and annihilating them, genociding them, they end up converting to their way of life. So there's nothing that's happening on this planet today that is not a repeat. In fact, even in our time, just 20 years ago, we had the genocide of Bosnia. What's going on in Gaza is nothing new. They tried to do the same thing to the Bosnians 20 years ago. It was sick. Okay? So again, we need interpreters of the Quran who can give us the correct understanding and the meaning of what Allah is trying to tell us, and also help us to be able to take Allah's words and implement them in our lives like those companions did. And that way we be able to handle our wars, our calamities, our trials of life with dignity and balance and humility like those companions did. We need a higher aim-based interpretation today. And we need truth scholars. True scholars. I ain't talking about the scholars for dollars who go to school and pay money to get a PhD in Islam and call themselves your teacher, and they taking advantage of you. I ain't talking about those creeps. I'm talking about real, bona fide, qualified interpreters of the Quran who can help us to see our way out of the forest through the words of Allah, and by implementing that understanding that those original companions had. And that's what tonight's lesson is going to be all about. So let me make the page larger, make myself smaller, so you guys can focus in on and take. And by the way, for the parents here, you should have me on the big screen TV for the kids. And that way I take screenshots of my PowerPoints for them too. Let me move this out the way so y'all can do that. Oh, what happened? How did I get muted? Am I muted? Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? Nobody's answering as usual. Let me look on here. Hold up. Okay, now. Can y'all hear me now? Okay. All right. I'll do it myself. Okay, so as Muslims, we have to recognize. Thank you, Jamila. We have to recognize the higher aims behind the revelations of the Quran. Our goal as Muslims should be to recite, and not just be able to recite the Quran with tajweed, but instead the goal should be to recite and understand what we're reciting, and then ponder or think about what we are reciting, and then fulfill the Quranic teachings by putting it in our lives. Okay, hold on for a second. They got issues in Zoom. Oh, hold on, let me try it. Okay. All right. So that's the whole thing, guys. And this is Maqasid. This is how the companions viewed the Quran. Okay, as Allah sent those revelations down, they didn't just learn how to say them. They understood what each word was, what it meant, what Allah was saying to them. And they would think about what Allah had to say to them, and then they would apply it to their lives. That's why they were victorious. And all the battles that the Muslims fought, the early Muslims fought, they were outnumbered and outweaponed. When they fought this battle that we talked about Sunday, the battle for Damascus against Heraclius. Heraclius had thousands and thousands and thousands of men, where the companions didn't even number a quarter of that. But the companions were victorious. Why? Because they not only quoted the Quran, they lived it and they believed in it. Allah tells us, guys, that for those of us who read the Quran but don't understand it, due to a lack of our sincerity, we're no different than a donkey carrying volumes of books. So we got a lot of donkeys amongst us. Yes, we got a lot of Muslims who have memorized how to recite the Quran. They call themselves scholars of the Quran and all of that. Beautiful tajweed, but they're no more than a donkey, because they don't have no understanding of what Allah is saying. They don't really believe in it, and they're not living it. And also, Allah describes those who do understand it and who do know its meanings, but they refrain from acting upon it, as even worse. These people are like dogs. Why? Because they have failed to acknowledge or realize what the higher aim or meaning of the Quran is all about. So the question is, are you a donkey or are you a dog? Which one? And this thing from Layla Nashiba, this is what Allah says. Okay? Allah don't beat around the bush. Allah doesn't sugarcoat. So are you a donkey or are you a dog? We got a lot of famous dogs in the news today, and we got a lot of famous donkeys. Are you one of their followers? Are you a follower of a dog or a follower of a donkey? Ask yourself. Okay? So, the higher meaning-based trend of explanation, this is the one that achieves the objective of not just reciting, but also understanding what Allah is saying and living by it. While the other trends are more concerned with just the textual, the textual interpretation of the Quran. We got a lot of famous donkeys who sit around giving lectures on YouTube, traveling all over to your community, giving their interpretation of the words of the Quran. Okay, but they're just donkeys. We also got dogs who do the same thing. So we have to be aware of that. The higher meaning explanations, if you truly understand them and implement them, they will complement whatever is happening in the world today as far as you being able to handle it. You know, if you truly understood the meaning of the Quran, you would have a well-guided and a well-steered process to contemplate, ponder, and explain and put into action. You wouldn't freak out about the war in Gaza. Oh, yeah, it's bad. It's not good that Muslims are dying all over the world, but what can you do? This is the qadr of Allah. Allah said, you will taste death. Allah tells us that in the Quran. You will surely taste death. The companions taste death, Y'all hearing, you learning in the history of Islam class with Mukhtar, many eminent companions taste death. So who are we to think that we won't taste it? Death is a part of life. We keep it moving, okay? We make dua for the believers, asking Allah to give them the strength to handle His decree with dignity, and we keep it moving. But we don't freak out like you Muslims are doing around the world, questioning why Allah is doing this, protesting against Allah's decree, boycotting and damning other Muslims who don't support your ignorance. That ain't how the companions were. Death, war is a part of life. War is a fact of life. The companions lived in a war society from the time they converted till their death. Who are you or me to think that we're better than that? If you had the true understanding of the Quran, you Muslims wouldn't be acting the way y'all acting today. It's atrocious. So the primary objective is to generate relevant and contemporary meanings for every chapter of the Quran and be able to apply them to whatever current events are happening today. Because the Quran, like the sister was saying, a lot of Muslims, like Sister Nia said, think that the Quran is outdated. No, it is not. I keep telling you guys, history just keeps repeating itself. Even in my lifetime, I've seen 4 different wars. Well, Vietnam, okay, the war, or not just Vietnam, I've seen more than 4. Vietnam, the war against Egypt, and the same war where my family, Saddam and them were fighting against the Zionists. Then we had Iraq in Iran. Then we had Iraq and Kuwait, Desert Storm. Then we had Afghanistan. I mean, war is a part of life. People die. Allah said that. You don't like death, but He's got to cleanse the earth. Allah says He sends war to cleanse the earth of bad people. They got to go. And to test the believers who are true to Him with something better than this filthy world. So it's got to happen. So the primary objective of the Quran is to generate relevant and contemporary meanings so that way you can apply them to whatever you're facing in life today. Unlike what the brothers in Texas say, we don't allow the problems of society to cause us to tweak the laws of Allah. No, that's backwards. We adhere to Allah's laws. And society tweaks itself as a result of us. Y'all understand that? We don't allow society to change us or compromise our faith. We fall back upon Allah, His book, and the Sunnah of our Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the examples of those companions. And we remain firm upon our Muslim identity, our Islamic values, despite society's norms. Okay? So, the higher meaning explanation of the Quran, it paves the way to implementing the executable part of the Quran in our lives by generating attainable and relevant meanings that we can apply to our situations. So the Quranic verses, they shift from just a theory to practice. And that's what it's all about. How many of us are practicing the Quran? How many of us are implementing the Quran into our daily lives, living by it? If we were, then that higher meaning of the Quran would protect us from being absorbed into unimportant things. Okay? Instead of us focusing on the wrong things, we focus on the things that we need to focus on to keep us strong. Remember, the prophet said, when you're faced with hardship, fall back. Fall back on your aqidah. Fall back on la ilaha illallah. What will help the Muslims of the later generations, he said, to get through the trials that they will witness. And he listed the trials of homosexuality, the trials of them killing each other, the trials of women being outnumbered, the women outnumbering men, the trials of women being dressed but still naked, the trials of adultery and fornication being the norm, the trial of intoxicants. The prophet said, what will help the believers to get through that is la ilaha illallah, how they will aim for the higher meaning of the Quran, absorb themselves in it, and apply it to their personal lives, and it will be the means to help them get through whatever they're faced with. This is what the prophet meant in those authentic hadiths in Sahih Bukhari. But we're not doing that. We're preoccupied with less insignificant issues of the Quran. We're preoccupied with things that leads to negative debates, which leads to disunity, and which leads to sectarian divisions. And that's why our Muslim nation today is suffering as it is. We're focusing on the wrong things. We should be focusing on aqidah, aqidah, aqidah. What it means to believe in Allah. What it means to believe in Allah's divinity. What it means to believe in his lordship. What it means to believe in the qadr of Allah. That's what we should be focusing on. That's what the lectures that these famous brothers should be based on. The understanding that nothing happens, good or bad, unless Allah wills it, and that there is no power or might other than Allah's. That's what we need to be focusing on right now, not this insignificant garbage. When we highlight the Quran and its high meanings, and we turn them into things we can execute in our daily lives, and we turn them into achievable objectives, this is when we create the incentive to produce within society what is needed to overcome whatever society claims to be the norm. That's what the companions did. Like I tell y'all ain't gonna find not one authentic hadith nowhere where any companion of the prophet or the second or third generation was walking around with signs, banners, protesting Allah's decree about war. And they were in war all the time. But what you will find are many, many hadiths of those companions reminding each other to have taqwa Allah, to remember that there is no power or might except in him, that he's in charge. And as long as we adhere to his laws, adhere to his commands, we'll always come out successful, because the non-believers don't have that. They don't have the taqwa Allah. But again, we're so far away from this understanding today that it's just pathetic. So, primary objectives. We need to focus on the primary objectives of the Quran and implement them, and leave the secondary objectives to the side for right now. Because we believe that the first 3 generations of Muslims, they actualize most of the higher meanings of the Quran, because again, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the practical illustration of the Quran. As his wife Aisha radiallahu anha described him, he was a walking, talking Quran. So the companions had the best teacher. They knew how to implement Allah's words, Allah's rules, Allah's suggestions and advice into their lives. And this is what changed their character. This is what changed their behavior to that which is pleasing to Allah. We don't have that today. Most Muslims today don't have the character or the companions. Most Muslims today are weak. Like I told you guys, the companions weren't weak. The women were not weak, and neither were the men. The men were not running around protesting and boycotting and asking, why is Allah letting babies die? No, the men were, don't cry for our babies. Don't cry for our babies, because our babies are in paradise. Where's yours? The women were strong too. Every battle that the Muslims fought, even though women didn't have to participate, there was a woman involved. You guys heard about the battle when the Muslims fought for Damascus. Who was the one that took out the eye of Thomas, the general of Heraclius? That was a woman whose husband had been martyred fighting against them. So even the women, the female companions, were not weak like women today are. They didn't sit around licking pus off their husbands. They didn't sit around praying and worshiping no man. When their husbands had to roll on that battlefield, they went out there with them. They said their belief was, let me die with my sword and Quran, rather than become a concubine of a kafir. That's why I tell you guys, these brothers today that talk about the companions, they don't know nothing about it. You don't know nothing about the companions of the Prophet, and you definitely don't know about his wives or the women, because those women were strong. You couldn't handle any of those female companions. Heck, you brothers can't handle Layla Nashiba. You can't handle me. How the heck can you handle any of those female companions? You brothers are so weak. You think that I'm loud. You think that my passion is anger. If you can't handle Layla Nashiba, what makes you ignorant men think y'all can handle any of those female companions? They were warriors. They went out to play in the name of Allah. You brothers couldn't handle them. Okay? So, individual growth and societal progression towards an ideal community in the period of the companions were the results of them pursuing the means that led to the higher meanings of that Quran. They were all about establishing Islam as the way of life. They didn't believe like these brothers in Texas telling y'all to tweak Allah's laws to accommodate society, to support LGBTQ, to vote for a woman when Allah tells you not to, and not just any woman, vote for the LGBTQ woman and her transgender running mate. Let's tweak Allah's laws to accommodate society. That ain't how those companions were. They didn't do that garbage. That's how they were able to take Islam from out of the peninsula of Arabia through the Roman Empire and the Persian, which is what we call the Middle East today. It's an Islamic state. So the distance of time and space between the present and those original companions has been an obstacle in developing an efficient understanding of the Quran and how to implement it in society. However, a good interpreter, he can bridge this gap by comparing the circumstances of the Quran with the present to find similarities, to find variations, and to generate a valid, relative, and energetic relationship between Allah's way and reality. Hello. The same way I've been trying to do in all my classes for the past year since this war began and you Muslims began acting ignorant. I've been trying to get you guys to look at the Quran, look at the hadiths, and see that ain't nothing different, ain't nothing new. Stand firm, stand true in your belief. Don't allow your emotions to get the better of you, because that's what Shaitan wants. Are there any moderators around?
I got it. Don't.
Y'all better get it together in that Zoom room, man. Seriously. All right, so subhanAllah, this is what I've been trying to do for the past year, to get you Muslims to stop being so emotionally out of it about the qadr of Allah and to stand firm in your belief and make the change. Change the condition of yourself, because as Allah says, he will never change the condition of a people till we change the condition of ourselves. And change begins with learning, implementing that Quran into your lives. So, the higher aim Quran interpreter, he has a big job on his hands. He has to generate intelligent and comprehensive meanings so that the layman, the average Muslim, can implement an action plan that's consistent with how the companions did. That's why I try to do with you sisters. I try to tell you, I don't care what these brothers today tell y'all. They all full of crap, most of them. The female companions were not no weak women. They were strong and they were beautiful. They didn't walk around in no burqa. Burqa's not even part of the Arabic women's dress, okay? They were outspoken, but they were women of dignity. They were women of balance. They believed in Allah. They loved Allah. They feared Allah, and they loved their prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they loved themselves. And that's the problem. A lot of women today don't love themselves. A lot of the women today are broken because that's what society has done. Society has broken women and broken men too. Society has caused women and men to change gender roles. But those original companions, they weren't broken women. They were strong. Okay? Like I said, give me my Quran, give me my sword, and I'm good to go. So, the higher aimed interpreter has to really be able to take what Allah says in that Quran and use the science of connectivity with those hadiths, and in turn help us to put an action plan together and remind us what would the companions do were they in this situation. The same thing I tell you sisters when y'all ask me questions. I tell you, what would Aisha do? What would Ibn Umar do? What would Umar Would Umar issue a fatwa saying that because you living in a non-Muslim country, we can support LGBTQ? When, by the way, Umar, what do y'all think? Mecca wasn't no Muslim state. Neither was Medina in the beginning. Neither was the entire Arabian Peninsula. Neither was the Roman Empire. Those were not Islamic states. Did Umar, did Abu Bakr, did Uthman, did Ali say, let's tweak Allah's laws because we're in a non-Muslim society, or we're dealing with non-Muslim people, or the non-Muslims have made LGBTQ lawful? It was going on back then too. The Romans were big on not just LGBTQ. The Romans did bestiality as well. So the Quranic interpreter, he can generate relevant, accepted, and dynamic meanings of the Quran that in turn can help the Muslim community to redirect their wasted negative energy from sectarian conflicts or debates to community building proposals. But who do we have doing that today? In America, you got all these famous speakers. They ain't no scholars, but you got a lot of famous speakers. How many of them are doing this? Okay, let's give an example. We may find several variations regarding the different postures that we perform when we perform our prayer, because they're based on different schools of thought or different interpretations of the hadiths. But do we ever see any disputes regarding the meaning of the prayer, regarding how important it is for us to have khushu' or connection with the law? We don't have disputes about that type of stuff. Okay? That same approach should be applied to society, to whatever issues are impacting us as an ummah society-wise. Okay? Also, another priority for the Quran interpreter is to strive to disenfranchise the Muslim community from a desire-driven interpretation of the Quran, and instead to have them cultivate authenticated and validated knowledge. Stop trying to read meanings that don't exist into what Allah is saying, and instead deal with the reality, the truth, as given to us by the Prophet Muhammad, or with that understanding of those companions. We need to get rid of all these distorted ideologies that many of these Sufis have, many of these Murjia have, the Jamia have, and etc. If we did this, guys, the higher meaning of the Quran would help us to focus on our levels of understanding. And again, most important, it would help us to reinforce our values, our purpose in life. We were created to worship Allah. We were put here on this earth to be tested in our belief in Him. And like He says, saying you believe in me is not enough. I'm going to test you with everything that's dear to you, your children, your money, your property, even your life, to see if you put any of that above me. So again, this is why it's important for us as Muslims to stop wasting our time with that insignificant stuff and focus on the primary stuff of the Quran, such as Aqidah, what it means to believe in Allah, what it means to believe in all His names, what it means to understand His attributes, what it means to believe that he's the creator of everything, including the bad and the evil. What it means to understand that nothing is going to happen unless he allows it. And what it means to understand that there is no power, there is no might other than his.